Okay, all right. Hello, class. Today, my goal is to go over a paper, and I changed the name for anonymity. My goal is just to kind of go through it and show, well, what would I do differently? How would I revise this and change a paper if this were my paper? And so this was from a different professor, so you'll notice the prompt is different. But this professor asked them to write a reflective essay as one of their assignments and to talk about what they've learned over the year and to cite examples from the readings and the assignments and the essays that they've done in class and to connect with them. So he wanted them to use personal examples as well as examples from the readings. So let's take a look at this and see if it meets that. So right off the bat, you might notice, and it's a bit hard to see, I'm going to change the view. You'll notice that the right hand side is aligned with the side of the page in a straight line, but so is the right side. And so we use left align in our essays for formal writing. So you highlight everything. Might be easier to use Control A and then just center the title. So that should be left aligned. The left side is a straight line and the right side is uneven. Now we've got our header, everything looks good. We have reflecting on your college experience. I'm gonna change this because actually, whose experience is she reflecting on? Hers. So I'm gonna change this to my, and let's actually undo that. Let's turn on the suggestions so you can see everything I do and compare it to the old way. My. All right, so I've changed it to my, and you'll see over here in the suggestions, you can accept or reject that change when you use this tool. So it's a great way to share work with one another. You said, I sat down one day and made a list of goals I wanted to achieve this year, 2020. Okay, this part's a little odd, but that's okay. So then she says a semicolon. Third down the list was enroll back in school. Oh, cool. And I like that she used quotes because she's kind of quoting herself there. Now, here's that part. It was the first time I wrote down a list of goals. So here, remember what I talked about in my video on the zombie nouns, the nominalizations? I talked about putting the characters in the front of the sentence so that way the characters are doing the action. Here's what I would do here is you notice the subject is it and was. I don't like it's at the beginning of sentences. So I could say, I sat down. Write a list of goals. All right, so now she's the character doing the action. I knew I had to keep myself accountable. After 13 years, I enrolled. It came time, oh, because that should be a new sentence. Subject, verb, I enrolled. And here's that it at the beginning of the sentence that I don't care for again. And so that's a pattern that would reoccur. Is a lot of students want to start sentences with the word it. I would go back in my second or third draft and look for those it's as the subjects, if there is a pronoun that's a subject, and ask, is the it standing in place for anything? So in this example, check this out. So here's my phone. It's a noun, right? The word it replaces the noun. So it being my phone. So my phone, its battery is going to die, right? Something like that. There, in that case, the it is clear. It's referring to my phone. But most of the time when students use it at the beginning of a sentence, there's nothing it's referring to. It's just a dead word. You can't circle it and draw a line to anything that it's referring to. And so when it's referring to something, even if it's at the beginning of a sentence, good. If it's not referring to anything and you can get rid of it, do that. So it came time to choose my first class and decided to start with English. So again, remember I said create the characters. Choosing my first class, maybe I could say that. Or the time. The time came. I can make time a character. The time came to choose my first class. So, because I don't want I to be at the beginning of every sentence either. So, I decided to start with English. I believe I generally don't like that, but here, because we are talking about personal experience as a reflective essay, I would say we can give some room, but just listen to the difference in tone here. It sounds more confident if I just get rid of it. English would give me a solid foundation to prepare me for the rest of my academic years. And being that she's speaking to her English professor, saying that, he's probably not going to argue with her. As I reflect back on where that decision has taken me, I see my growth in writing, reading, and changes its impacted me. Sorry, I misread that. This is a good opportunity too. I'll often have, I like to go to the writing center a lot, and sometimes I'll have somebody read my paper out loud for me, because then I hear, well, what's working from a casual reader, and I'm not probably giving this the most energy I could as I read it, but not all readers do. A lot of readers have a lot of distractions going on. So this part was a little odd for me. So I thought that it's a good thesis. So I can see we have growth in writing, we have reading and changes, we have reading, and it changes in my academic habits. So we could reword this. So you say, as I reflect back on where that decision has taken me, I see my growth in, and I was actually going to reverse this. You don't know, but she goes in a different order. Reading. She mentions reading in her first paragraph. And actually, you can see it here. Skimming, she would read. So I'm going to put reading first. In my reading, writing, and instead of it's impacted my academic habits, we have my growth, see my growth in my academic habits. Okay, and I need to fix my spelling there. Academic habits. Okay, and then this part, I can just erase. Okay, so I think that looks better. So as I reflect back on where that decision has taken me, I see my growth in my reading, writing, and academic habits. Good. So it's a little bit of a clearer sentence. And that's really important when it comes to your writing for your thesis statements, because thesis statements often have a lot of elements in them. So if you can shorten it, if you can get rid of words and say the same thing, always do that. And I know that works against most students' goals, because a lot of times they're worried about a word count. I think sometimes that word count works as the incentive to actually write worse and to add dead words into the paper. We don't want to add dead words. You don't want to make the paper worse. It's better to be short and to be accurate and to be good and to sound good and make a strong argument, to have your voice, carried through the words of the page, than to add a bunch of dead words. So I have always been a skimmer. So this one's about reading. I would put the reading over at the front. You can start with this. My first area of improvement was in my was with maybe reading skills. So I want to make sure I always start with a clear topic sentence, period. Okay, so first sentence should cover what the topic is about of the paragraph. So if I read just the first sentence, or sometimes first two sentences, I should be able to predict what's going to happen. That's a good way to revise globally, is to maybe ask another reader to just to read the first two sentences. What do they predict that paragraph's going to be about? Sometimes the first sentence is a transitional statement or a question, and then the second sentence is the topic sentence. But the majority of the time, it should just be the first sentence. Oh, and I spelled this wrong, but spell things correctly, obviously, too. That's a second draft thing. So you write and then you revise. You write and then you edit. Fixing spelling, that's pretty easy to do. In fact, somebody else could do it and they won't even change your intention of what you're trying to do. Okay, so I have always been a skimmer. That should be a period. It's a complete sentence, although that's not a big deal. I did not read much, but when I did read at work, well, we do some comma stuff in our video on commas. I recommend everybody watch the comma video. And if you want, subscribe to my YouTube channel. See, so as I read at work, I would skim through the policies, procedures, or manuals to get the information I needed and move on. Actually, there's probably different levels of reading. So I might add a comment here to this student. Maybe describe the different kinds of reading. Because in some cases, that actually might make sense to do that. Okay, so the first article we read in class, Brainology by Carol Dweck. So here she mentioned something very specific. I like that. Very quickly put a stop to that. Looking for golden lines. With us, we did the quote, comment, question. That's kind of the same thing. There were emotions tied to the readings that I could only get by carefully reading to fully understand, even if it meant to read the text twice. Yes, that's important. By making the small change to sit back and analyze what I was reading, I was able to connect to the article and relate it back to my life. I find myself protesting or agreeing with the author as I read. Skimming is a part of the past. Okay, so now she's got a good concluding sentence. Right here, when she says she analyzes it and relates it back to her life, try to look for areas where you can add more information, more text. Here, I would add a specific example. So maybe she wrote a narrative. Like, remember I asked you guys to write about your self-authoring. You wrote some narratives, and sometimes I said for your formal essays, also try to include some personal examples that you've witnessed or experienced yourself, or use a hypothetical example. If she did that here, I would recommend to this student adding a personal example where they really related to the text. Something different from Brainology, because their professor did say mention the assignments, the works. So the more specific you can be, the better. Okay, so next, we're on our next paragraph. Here, the second sentence is really the topic sentence, it seems like. So you can't expect, this is sort of just an introductory sentence. You can't expect to take an English class and not write. Writing makes me very nervous. We could add a transition. So whenever you add a transition, you want to take something old from the last paragraph and something new from the new paragraph. So think of that phrase for marriages, something old, something new. You don't need something borrowed and blue, but you do need something old and something new. So this one's about reading. This one's about writing. So something as simple as, like reading, you can't expect to take an English class and not write. Now, she was talking about her experiences. So, you know, at the top, she said, your college experience. Well, it's a reflective essay for her. So actually, it probably should be, instead of you, it should be I, first person. I can't expect to take an English class and not write. Writing makes me nervous. Okay, see how, yeah, we needed that. She shifted perspective, point of view, you to I, mid-thought. You don't want to do that. If you're using an example, it should stay consistent throughout the example, at least. I'm not saying you can't use you, it should be consistent. There are so many ways to write, varying on what, so again, you or I. It should be I am writing about. And so here, as an autobiography, such as an autobiography, observation, argumentative essay, or reflective essay. I am sure there are a lot of writing styles, so this should be plural. And then I generally get rid of the allots. I'm sure there are, even the word many would be better here. A lot just doesn't do anything for us. I think it's not a very descriptive word. So try to come up with like 5 or 6 synonyms for the word a lot. You know, there are substantial, there are many, there are multiple, there are myriad. There are myriad writing styles, or just many. So just come up with some synonyms. You know, maybe you don't like myriad there. I'm just going to leave it there just for now, because this is just, you know, one pass through. I can go back and edit it again, or revise it again. This is sort of that last polishing stage. This is getting towards a final draft. I'm adding some revision. Revision would be the things like adding an example, adding a comment. Editing would just be changing one word or changing a comma. However, through these essays, I got, you know, I'm not a huge fan of got. That's one of those words, again, where if I can take out the 1-cent word and add a 5-cent word, that 5-cent word really adds a sheen to the writing that just smooths it out. When I think about writing in a final draft, I'm also thinking about listening. How does it sound as it comes off the page? Does it sound pleasant? And notice it's right next to the a lot, and so it's like a double twinge there in terms of the sound. So I got, I received, I attained, I gained. Maybe I gained. That sounds better. I gained. Instead of a lot, here I'm going to use substantial. And then I can get rid of the extra words of. So I have fewer words. So my word count goes down, but the paper's better. So I gained substantial practice in essay and paragraph organization. I had to, here's that get again. I had to familiarize, maybe I could turn that into a word. I had to familiarize. I had to get reacquainted. I was reacquainted. I might be fixating too much on the get here. We can leave it. We don't have to, toil over every single word. I had to get familiar once again with an introductory paragraph, thesis sentence, topic sentence, concluding sentence, and concluding paragraph. Being able to practice this with different, these elements. So be specific, these elements. Being able to practice these, I'm going to say writing elements, with different types of essays made me feel more comfortable with writing. Although here's that a lot again, it's not doing me any favors. So come up with 10 synonyms. Although there is more, just getting rid of it makes the paper better. Although there is more to learn about writing in general, my confidence in myself to write, we don't need that. My confidence in myself as a writer, that's better maybe, has increased substantially. Okay, Better than a lot, we have substantial. So come up with 10 words for the a lot and don't use a lot. Rarely use it if you use it. There are times where simplicity speaks volumes. Simplicity works. Get rid of all the reallys and all the varies in your essay. In fact, we could just do a control F and look for any reallys. I didn't really. You can just get rid of them. You don't even have to read the essay, and you can almost know that if you get rid of them, they'll be better. Okay, so let's go back. Well, let's do another control F. Let's look for vary. Only 5. Maybe I'll leave 1. Writing makes me very nervous. Writing makes me nervous. Period. I think that sounds better. Let's get rid of that vary. We already missed that one, but hey, you could do this after the fact. This could be the last thing. Go through it and see. Okay, that's not a vary. That's an every. So those are okay. All right, so we're good. We got rid of an extra one. That's the last thing you could do, a finishing thing. All right, let's go a little bit further. Someone else reviewed my essay, made me doubtful. Someone else reviewing my essay made me doubtful. Peer reviews were, not was, peer reviews were something that came with every essay I wrote. Knowing that my essay was going to be criticized by my peers was not something I was looking forward to. I was hesitant to read my first peer review, but once I read it, I recognized how helpful it was. My peers gave me a balance of good constructive feedback. This experience, okay, so this is good that she says this experience. I would say give an example of the feedback, be specific again. And even put a quote of the feedback maybe, or give a quote of what you changed if you're this writer. Okay, once I realized I enjoyed my paper's feedback, I gave the Writing Center a chance. I submitted my essay to them, sharing 3 areas I would like the consultant to focus on reviewing in 24 hours. I had my review. The reply the consultant shared with me was priceless. This is okay because it refers to reply. It enthused me to go back and change my essay. I can also say I'm undeniably using the Writing Center on every essay I write. Being intimidated by others reviewing my essay does not make me uncomfortable anymore. That should be a period. I look forward to reading the response of others. Okay, I like that. And here's another tip I would give. Remember in my video on nominalizations, I said, tell a story. If you're writing a story, you want to have characters. Now here, rather than consultant, what would be better? Well, saying the name. The areas I would like the consultant, and I don't know the consultant's name. I'm going to make up a name right now. I'll just say Anna. To focus on for my review or in 24 hours. So, giving the characters names helps to make them jump off the page a little bit more. People's minds, we call this cognitive ease. They attach themselves to characters and actions. And if you make the characters obvious, then the reading flows much more smoothly for the reader. So be specific. Okay, so that really is sort of it. As you revise, think about that. So you notice the things I did was to eliminate extra words, look for those dead words and replace them with better words like a lot, very, and really. And to look for areas where I can be more precise, where I can be more specific and give a concrete, specific example that the reader can visualize and see and really, something tangible, such as giving the name of the characters, using a specific example of what somebody wrote on the essay for the peer review, like that one, the feedback that, offering a specific sentence or offering a specific example when she talked about how she connected and related the articles back to her life. Give an example of what you wrote if you wrote a narrative or story. Okay, so hopefully that helps and that gives you some ideas of what to look for as you review your own writing and revise for a final draft.